Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. And welcome, my friends, to Event Comics Month 4, Secret Metal Armageddon 2. Next time we do voting for Event Comics Month, can we please pick some events with similar names? It would make these titles considerably less awkward. But yes, it is time once again to look through event comics from Marvel and DC, and only Marvel and DC, because while other companies have certainly done event comics over the years, their impact in the grand scheme of things has been negligible because the numbers on their own books are significantly less. There's a reason why it's the big two, and why I call Image an indie company, despite them being third in line for market share of American comics behind DC and Marvel. The domination of Marvel and DC cannot be understated, and they're the ones that have lasting pop culture relevance. With some notable exceptions, of course, but they tend to be their own unique things when they happen. We're not seeing an Image Comics cinematic universe that includes The Walking Dead, Invincible, and Spawn. Although now I kinda wish we did. But even limiting it to Marvel and DC has its share of issues for people. As a reminder, I have guidelines on what constitutes an event comic and what doesn't. 1. There must be a central miniseries where the main plot of the event advances. 2. It must have tie-in issues from individual comic titles. That's what makes it an event. All these books taking time out of their regular narrative in some way to contribute something to the overall story. Now, admittedly, those guidelines can be bent a bit. As I said the last time we did this, Heroes in Crisis just barely constitutes an event comic, since it only has 2 tie-ins, but tie-ins nevertheless. Although it wouldn't surprise me if everyone else at DC looked at Heroes in Crisis and said, no, we're not going anywhere near that crap. But yeah, I have to repeat these guidelines sometimes because people will ask me if something counts or not as an event, or wonder why something else wasn't on the list for voting. So yeah, Heroes in Crisis technically counts, but Age of Apocalypse does not. No central miniseries, just a bunch of miniseries bookended by an Alpha and Omega issue. Ironically, Spider-Verse does not count as an event comic for that same reason, but its sequel, Spider-Geddon, does count and was available for the vote. A lot of things that some people think of as events are just crossover storylines, a multi-part story told across various titles. Batman has had a ton over the years. Court of Owls, No Man's Land, Officer Down. They're certainly significant, but without a central miniseries, it's not that different than, say, a crossover between Captain America and Wolverine, where part 1 is in Cap's book and part 2 Wolverine's. It's just longer. But enough about what doesn't count for this. Let's talk about the stuff that not only qualified, but you guys voted on. And man, you guys once again really wanted modern events this year. Credit where it's due, the voting on Marvel's side was very close for a while, swapping out between 3 titles, but with the final result, sadly, we are yet again still not covering Infinity Crusade, the final part of the Infinity Trilogy, but it was close. Maybe next time. The DC side had a clear winner everyone wanted, and that'll come at the end of the month, but most of the votes went towards stuff from the last 5 to 10 years. Save for today's review, the unexpected one of this vote that managed to nudge out a few more modern titles, Armageddon 2001. And I'm pretty sure this is just one of those cases that it's being done because it's a topic I've actually talked about before, and it's tied into other things I've covered, including other events. This, my friends, is the story of Monarch, and all the garbage that came from it. Armageddon 2001 is a very unique sort of event comic because it's only 2 issues long. Like the aforementioned Age of Apocalypse, those 2 issues served as bookends to the story, with the majority of the action taking place in the tie-ins, in this case being the special annual issues of most of the books in the DCU. The premise, as we'll see when we get into the nitty-gritty of it, works well for this situation, but it also leads to the problem of me reviewing it. I only cover the event itself and not the tie-ins. And some of you have said to me, but wait, Linkara, that means you have to cover the annuals that happened in between. That's how you get the full story. No, I don't. That's been my entire point when it comes to event comics. If you are going to include critical, need-to-know information in some random tie-in instead of the actual main event comic, then it's a bad story. It was bad in Final Crisis, it was bad in Amazon's Attack, and it's bad in Armageddon 2001. Tie-ins are there to expand the story, go down from the big picture to see the small details, and make things a bit more enriching because you can see the full scope of everything as opposed to the main details of the event. Because otherwise, it's just a big middle finger to the audience. No, you can't just get this story on its own. You can't just read this and have the gist of things for after the event is over. No. You have to buy everything. We want your money and you're gonna give it to us. If you want to follow and understand and enjoy it, you need to deplete your wallet and give it all to us. Now here's the funny thing. You don't actually need to read the tie-ins to Armageddon 2001. But if you did, you will actually be even more pissed off about it. And we'll talk about the whys of it when we get to it. Let's dig into Armageddon 2001 and see what this thing's actually about.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, when bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he is a man, punch, sporadically a grouch. Linkara, he has his own spaceship, but he's always on his couch. Linkara, ghosts, gods, a universe in flux. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Because we're only talking about 2 issues, plus I actually have both issues, we can talk about the covers for once. And the first issue's one is not great. Not terrible, certainly, but it's got a few problems. For starters, the whole idea of lining up all the heroes on either side, that's fine, but something about the way they've been put here has made the whole thing get off-centered. Or at least it kinda looks off-center, with the heroes on the right being more spread out from the middle than the ones on the left. I think what might be going on as a result of the DC logo being in the upper left, it kinda shoved the Armageddon 2001 title over so that Monarch is not centered with it and it throws everything else off. Not to mention the cover itself is just a bit too busy. The heroes and their various colors are mostly fine, but then you add on the starfield in the background and your eyes just have a lot to take in and it's hard to parse. There's a reason why cosmic stuff tends to be drawn with the Kirby crackle. It keeps it from just being tons and tons of little specks everywhere. Introducing Wave Rider! I'm sorry, but we already have a Wave Rider in the DC universe. 10 years from now, the world will survive. These heroes won't. That's okay, though. We'll just bring them back in the next reboot. We open on, well, what I'm sure is supposed to be something cosmic as multicolored streaks of light head towards a nebula or something. Thoughts. Takes so long for them to come together. And unfortunately, when they do, they just make me think of impregnation with this image. Eternities. But then I have time. Honestly, I probably should have packed a book or something. As we zoom in on the cosmic energy, the narrator says that it's not that he has time, but rather time has him. And soon he flashes back to when he was a little boy trapped under some rubble before being rescued by a superhero. A strong hand stretches for mine. Is it flesh or gloved or something else entirely? I did think it was weird that a superhero was using one of those toy robot grabby hand things to rescue me, but still. He can't recall what superhero it was, just that indeed he was saved by them. The building The whole building fell. I thought nothing could help. Sometimes it seems that way. And then Batman shows up and continues to show how awesome he is. Ha ha! Alfred, add it to the tally. That should put me 5 points above Clark. I feel like celebrating. Let's go surfing! Which is why someone should be there to try. Not me, though. I got like 10 errands to run. See you, kid! In my mind, they are giants. And whoever saved me that day was one of them. Giants. They grew that way in my thoughts. Magic wand! Make my Superman grow! He points out that they weren't perfect, as illustrated by them punching each other into buildings. They had their failings. They had their differences. I learned that, but they all came together when they learned that their moms had the same name. Yeah, weird sudden homage to The Dark Knight Returns for this bit. Anyway, point is that in the end, they always joined together to fight a greater threat. This made them giants. This united them, in spite of all risks, in the face of the most terrible challenges. Said terrible challenge is a giant Darkseid. Okay, I haven't seen the Snyder Cut, but does Darkseid grow to kaiju size in that? Because that would get me to watch it. I know that's supposed to be a belt around him, but with it painted the same as his skin, it makes Darkseid look like he's wearing a crop top and a Speedo. Darkseid is proud of the work he did with his sit-ups. Check out these abs. Anti-life justifies these gains. My God, where is the couch that can satisfy him now? I am severely disappointed that at no point during this fight do the Justice League hop into a giant robot to fight him. Wait, aren't the heroes giants too? Did Darkseid make himself bigger just because he was jealous? Everybody laughed when they said that Darkseid had a Gigantamax form, and yet here we are. You know, this problem could be solved in 2 seconds if Superman just flew fist first into his junk at super speed. Of course, you could say that about a lot of superhero fights. Darkseid heard all of those what if Ant-Man expanded in Thanos' butt jokes and overcompensated a bit. Damn it, we can't summon Godzilla to fight him! He's a Marvel character! Oh God, where does he pee? I guess the Ghostbusters were wrong. They do make Nikes in that size. And finally, well hey, now we've got to rename him from Darkseid to On the Tall Side! Shut up, I'm funny. Anyway, after some more praise about heroes and giant-sized Darkseid is defeated, the narrator explains that there came a day when all the heroes died. In the end, it was not some cosmic menace, not some fabled villain. As with so many things, it was poor box office returns. In the end, it was one of their own. What triggered it? Madness or cold calculation? Years of deception? One sudden dark urge? Jeez, we were just doing shots in a bar and then all this happened! Dude could just not hold his liquor. But yeah, whoever this hero was, they successfully killed off the rest, as indicated by this one skeleton wrapped around a rock. I'm not even sure how that thing is staying intact like that. Admittedly though, that could just be DEO director Bones trying to do his best pole dancing. But yeah, according to this, they all died out in the year 2001. It's gonna turn out the hero killer was really Dave Bowman. And thus we enter the story proper as we see a city street featuring this big statue of the ruler of this world, Monarch, holding up the title of the issue, Dark Time. So, night? We meet Mathew Ryder, a scientist who seems to be spacing out a bit as he looks at the Monarch statue. His co-worker, Harris, tells him to get his mind back on work. Harris, you remember before they put up all the statues? Yeah, but frankly, that hot dog vendor wasn't very good anyway. Harris says that they need to get back to being research scientists, and that Ryder needs to stop caring so much about history. Instead, he should focus on team projects. I've already made quota. That's what I've been trying to talk about. You get ahead, then putter on private stuff. Look, it doesn't matter if you're in a dystopian future or the present day. You work only as hard as you're paid to work, people. Don't let crappy coworkers or bosses tell you to work more than that unless you're compensated for it. He turns down the chance to go to the bar and instead heads off down a deserted street as we see him surrounded by posters for stuff like the Future Cops, the Peacemakers, and EconoCorp, a subsidiary of ConhugeCo. EconoCorp, doing the world's business. Unfortunately, they're doing it with Bitcoin, so it's not going very well. I had originally written a joke about how everything looked pretty futuristic for 2001, but in reality, this is the year 2030, as the good Mr. Ryder narrates. So yeah, expect the sleek cars and super tech in the next few years, everybody. He explains that crime and corruption still exist here, but nothing ever goes too far, since if it does, Monarch steps in to put a quick stop to it. He heads to a used disc store, though apparently not CDs or even DVDs, but rather, since this was written in 1991, it's floppy disks.
Be closing soon, mister. You looking for anything special?
Yeah, you wouldn't happen to have any more Optimus Prime brains in the back, would you? No, of course, he's after some more forbidden things. Not drugs or illegal porn, but rather stuff about superheroes.
You're not my only customer with this sorta, what would you call it, itch? And the harder they make it to scratch, the more you feel like doing it, huh, mister? Some of us remember better, don't we, mister? Even if they don't want us to. Even if they made the name for it a dirty word. Heroes. Makes you sweat a little just hearing it, huh?
Okay, I take it back. He kind of makes it sound like it is drugs or porn. It seems the very concept of heroism or idolization of figures aside from Monarch is outlawed. He doesn't just have superhero material, but stuff on sports figures, actors, record breakers.
One, God help 'em, politicians.
I don't think I've ever felt more pity for a fictional character than this unknown person who wants stuff about heroic politicians. After Ryder stares at what I presume to be low-quality photos of heroes, since, again, he was handed a 3¼ inch floppy disk, and lamenting how they all died in 2001, his wife calls him down to dinner. I don't see the appeal in spending so many hours with that computer. It's antique, hopelessly outdated. Yeah, well, maybe when DOSBox runs my old games properly. Family dinner does not go well. The narration kind of illustrates the awkwardness perfectly. 4 steadily diverging lives briefly meeting over dinner, exchanging plans and goals. The conversation of strangers. That is the last time we invite some randos off the street in for dinner. Yeesh. Actually, it's more that the family is clearly having issues. Matthew's son, Alex, wants to get into corporate management for an easy life, while Matthew wants him to take more risks in things, echoing his thoughts about heroes taking risks to help people. And in turn, Matthew's daughter, Karen, has embraced the fascistic way of life as one of the peacekeepers, proudly espousing how they need to bust the heads of people showing anti-social tendencies before they actually do something wrong, and even demands her father show her more respect as a member of the Future Cops. 2030. My world. My time. Family time. Hospital time, as I have now broken my hand. The next day, Matthew stares at one of Monarch's statues and contemplates a rumor about them, that they actually have cameras that Monarch uses to watch everything that happens on Earth. And it's easy to believe that's the case, since Monarch has dealt with every terrorist outbreak or natural catastrophe that has occurred. He's only become more reclusive in recent years because the peacemakers have been so efficient at their jobs. Harris takes him out of his daydreaming again to tell him that he's heard a rumor that there's big pressure up in the quantum physics division for results on their latest project. I wouldn't worry. I hear they're making some real breakthroughs out in Black Mesa. We'll see something interesting any day now. Actually, they're talking about time travel, but before they can continue on about it, someone runs past them chased by the peacemakers. People flee away from where they're gonna shoot, but a little girl in the middle of it all screams for her mommy, and no one is attempting to help her. Remembering the hero who helped him, Matthew leaps in and saves the girl, but knocks down some of the peacemakers in the process. And of course, his daughter is there and arrests him for what he did. Normally, this is grounds for him being sent to a government mental institution and even being brainwashed. Seriously, she calls it personality modification. But thanks to her position and her mom's corporate rank, they're letting him off with just a warning on his record. I saved a little girl's life, Karen. You don't know how we'd have resolved it. Really, because from the looks of it, your resolution would have been let her get shot in the crossfire. What's worse is that the guy that they were chasing was the disc shop owner, a harmless old man who had politically sensitive material. It justified a preemptive. If he was harmless, Dad, he shouldn't have run. Like that little girl shouldn't have been in the way and I shouldn't have interfered? What's happened to you, Karen? What's happened to everyone? We're living our lives, Dad. God, Dad, we're just shooting at otherwise innocent or nonviolent people in crowded areas. That's just life. That's the way the world is. Then someone should change it. Well, for starters, they can change the Monarch statue here. I get the one where he's kind of reaching his hand out towards the future, but What's the deal with this one where he's T-posing? Anyway, since Monarch seems to be the one who's pushing for the time travel experiments, Mathew realizes that it's for his own protection. He's trying to make sure nobody can travel back in time and prevent him from doing all this by having access to time travel himself. Mathew researches which hero Monarch could have been, I'm guessing there's no official record of who it was for that same reason, and volunteers to be the test subject for the time travel experiments. And apparently the quantum physics division operates out of an art gallery? Anyway, they reject him. You'll also understand we couldn't possibly consider anyone with your record. Reckless tendencies, unhealthy preoccupations. God, you run out of clean laundry, wear a clown suit to work one day, and suddenly it's an unhealthy preoccupation. We see the time travel experiments in action. A person getting transformed into tachyons and sending them down the time stream. Riding it, so to speak. However, as Harris narrates, all the theories check out, but no one ever returns from the ride. Although, given this panel, maybe the problem is that Monarch keeps smashing the controls before they can. Mathew thinks that his own crazy streak might be exactly what's needed, but he needs to get Monarch's attention since the division refuses to let him volunteer. As such, he tosses a wine bottle at a statue's face, mocking Monarch's inability to time travel, sets it on fire, and it explodes! Maybe Monarch shouldn't be using his statues to store his dynamite collection. The Peacemakers immediately show up, but so does Monarch, who takes him to his space station in orbit. Monarch admits that while he's been successful at making the world secure and perfect in his eyes, he doesn't have that same guarantee about his future. Or past. As such, he's haunted by the possibility it may all disappear and wants to know what the hell Ryder thinks he can do to solve the time travel issue. Mathew explains the problem is not the technology, but rather the test subjects. They don't have the will, the strength of purpose, the inner direction to survive the process. Because in making the world secure, you're making those qualities extinct. It's actually a fascinating dystopian concept. By outlawing heroism, by discouraging drive and risk-taking for something greater and encouraging only flat obedience and immediate action without regard for consequence or proportional response, nobody has the actual mental will and fortitude to survive the strain. Fascism leading to stagnation, breeding out true bravery and courage. Mathew says that he's desperate for this chance, needing vindication for himself and his family, and this could be the ticket to giving Monarch security in his empire. Monarch agrees, though as Mathew's being readied, he admits that that same drive he talks about is a quality that they both share, but that makes Mathew dangerous and unpredictable. As such, he plants the seed to ensure he be careful about not altering the time stream, that to do so would mean the loss of his family, of everything that he loves. To test that love, Monarch and Ryder engaged in some kind of weird mental battlefield wherein they're giant-sized and fighting among buildings. Monarch rambling about how only he was willing to take control of a chaotic world that had too many giants. Despite the pain the whole thing is causing him, Mathew stays firm and seems to suggest that he'll fight to keep his family alive. Secretly, however, he admits that he hates his family and all that Monarch's secure world has done to them. They don't share my passion for old computers, Monarch! This is your fault! The ruse works and Monarch approves. Mathew sent into the time stream. 2030. Monarch's world. Monarch's time. My victory. And then I learn what I have won.
A new car!
The process naturally screws with his mind and it's trippy and abstract, leading us back to that imagery at the start, wherein Mathew learns to become part of the energies of time and flows with it, transforming himself into Wave Rider, whom we've seen a couple of times on the show, during the last Event Comics month in 0 Hour, for instance. He soon learns about a variety of powers at his disposal, manipulation of energy fields of various kinds, time travel, and even manipulating how he looks when out of the time stream as he takes on the appearance of a cop. He learned about a serial killer who targeted cops and came specifically to find him, using him as a test subject for another ability, seeing possible futures from them. As he says, timelines can be changed, but for the most part tend to stay in a general direction. Hence, while there are times when something will alter, like said cop killer deciding to not be a murderer again after getting an appeal, there aren't an infinite number of possibilities, and most tend to still go a particular way. And thus, that's how Wave Rider will seek out Monarch, use this ability to probe the heroes of the DC Universe to try to find which one is going to become Monarch, ending the first part as he declares that he has time to make his search. And thus that leads into, as I said, the meat of the event. Wave Rider going up to heroes, touching them, and examining the most likely future for them. Unfortunately, it's one of those tricks that's kind of like Future's End, in that it can be potentially, well, pointless. Unless it's a what-if kind of situation, dark alternate future tales tend to only be a cool thing if it has an actual point for the characters involved, especially in terms of comic books, a story about preventing it kind of thing. In comics, things can change rapidly from creative reshuffling and the sliding timescale, so that like 100 issues of a book technically only take place in a single year of a character's life or something, even if they've experienced multiples of the same holiday in that time span. As such, it could mean that they'll never reach where that dark future is supposed to be, thus the story being about preventing that future from coming to pass. But with the annuals, yeah, these futures aren't gonna happen, and we know they're not gonna happen. And not because of the character's own interventions, but rather through Wave Rider. Because of course time is already being changed by his mere presence. And hell, reading through the annuals, it's inconsistent whether the heroes even know what's going on. The different writers seem to have been given differing instructions on how this works. Sometimes Wave Rider is completely intangible and does it without the hero even knowing. Other times he disguises himself as someone and they do see the future and learn of Wave Rider's mission. This is only made worse by the fact that because they had multiple Superman and Batman books, Wave Rider ended up going back to Superman 3 different times and Batman twice. For Superman, one did acknowledge the previous encounter since a lingering memory of the future vision allowed Superman to prevent disaster, and despite Wave Rider being convinced that second time that, yeah, there's no way that this guy becomes Monarch, suddenly he's at it again at the third time, saying, I'm not satisfied with the results. And because the future keeps being different each time with this, that just means that he'll never get a satisfying answer, since he'd have to keep testing every day if the future is just going to be so vastly different each time. And then, despite asserting before that he needs to keep his activities secret in case whatever hero who will become Monarch is playing the long game, in the final annual he apparently just suddenly came to Superman, explained the whole thing, and they go around investigating heroes, in particular the Justice League Europe. Captain Atom was away while the others were checked out, and when he returns, that leads us into the second issue of Armageddon 2001. The cover for this one is pretty good, keeping with our recurring theme of everybody's giant size now. We have a giant monarch with a dozen or so heroes floating around him. At last, the shocking identity of Monarch revealed. Of course. Granny goodness! So yeah, time to finally conclude this. The story's been happening over the course of several months in 2001, so let's see how this goes. Opening with Wave Rider about to test Captain Atom. He knows that one of the 20th century's great heroes will be the instrument of that cruelty, that oppression, and he believes he has narrowed the choices to one. I should have known. It was Superman! You've tested me 3 times and it wasn't me. A clever ruse, Man of Steel. He touches Captain Atom and, like the annuals, we get a dark story of the future where Captain Atom's children and grandchildren are murdered by a street gang, and in his anger he murders the gang before collapsing in horror over what he's done. And it's unclear if this was always how things were supposed to play out, but regardless of whether this backstory was the original plan, this is what we got. So on the off chance that this is your first time hearing about this, Armageddon 2001 is a story infamous for having its ending changed. Before the widespread use of the internet, before social media, before people posted spoilers online, it got leaked to the comic reading public that after 6 months of the storyline running through the annuals, the big mystery of Armageddon 2001, who was the hero who murdered all the other heroes and became Monarch, was gonna be revealed to be Captain Atom. DC, in order to preserve the twist ending, changed it to someone else, who we'll get to in a bit. It is consequently one of the dumbest and most short-sighted creative decisions that DC has ever made for a number of reasons, not the least of which being that it assumes that the only way that the story will be satisfying for the audience is if there's a twist. I don't like spoilers because sometimes events occur in stories that only hold as great an impact on the audience because you didn't know it was coming. Otherwise, that detail ends up hanging in the back of your mind. You're waiting for the event to happen rather than be immersed in the story and letting it happen organically. And that can damage the experience of seeing the story unfold for the first time. Sure, repeat visits won't have the same impact because you've already seen it, but that initial hit is still an experience that is unique because you hadn't seen it coming. coming. There's a reason why sometimes people will say that they wish they could forget that they saw a movie so they can experience it for the first time all over again. However, the counter-argument is that if a twist is all you've got, then it's not a good story. Without the shock value of the moment, it reveals how shallow and worthless the story is without it. So I don't begrudge people who seek out spoilers so that they can try to enjoy a story for its own merits rather than just the twist. And obviously, DC thought that if everyone knew the answer of who Monarch was because of that leak, then the story was worthless without some kind of twist. And the sad thing is, it's not! The first issue of Armageddon 2001 is legitimately great. I'll sum up at the end, but this lack of faith in the comic doomed what could have been one of the best events DC ever made. And here's another weird thing. The first issue was written by Archie Goodwin, but the second by Dennis O'Neil. Was that a result of the decision to change the twist, or was this always the plan? And if it was, why was that always the plan? Why switch writers for the resolution of this? Ugh, whatever. As the vision with Captain Atom ends, who should happen to teleport in but Monarch? The experiment was a success. Indications were that you survived the time travel. Then I was a guinea pig? Yeah, he said that already in the first issue. That's another problem with having two different writers apparently making this thing 6 months apart. I did not want to risk a loyal citizen. If a subversive like you had died, it would have been no loss. Unlike all those loyal people who were risked before you and died. Monarch was actually trapped in the time stream after his own effort to use the device, but somehow tapping into Captain Atom's unique quantum field during the future vision was able to push him out and bring him to the present day. You planned to destroy my empire. You know that? I am not a fool. My peacekeepers are not fools. I just gave someone who hated me the power to travel back in time and murder me. And all my peacekeepers did was almost kill a little girl without regard for her life. We're the smart people. The assembled heroes, which now includes Superman, despite him leaving in the annual before this,
Great continuity!
attack Monarch, with only Superman capable of getting some hits off on him. A moment ago, I pulled my punch. Don't make me hit you again. Over there may need to take care of its own problems, but you're over here now, Monarch. Monarch teleports away, reappearing at a campsite where Dawn Granger, aka Dove, is having a romantic getaway with her boyfriend, whom Monarch promptly kills. After Dawn transforms into Dove, he knocks her out. Back over to the Justice League Europe, the group discusses how nobody has really been eliminated from consideration as Monarch because Wave Rider's own presence ended up altering how the timeline played out in the multiple possibilities. Well then what in the hell was the point of any of this? Wave Rider realizes that by that same logic, he may have inadvertently created Monarch by traveling back in time like he did, and he further states that he's a little ashamed of himself for all this. It was fascinating, darting in and out of all those lives, like reading other people's diaries, but magnified 1,000-fold. I was the greatest voyeur in history, and I enjoyed every moment of it. I didn't want it to end, and so I ignored the contradictions in what I was doing. Remember this point for later. Monarch and Dove arrive at their destination. What did you do to me? Where am I? You are on a mountain in Asia.
Well, that narrows it down.
After knocking Dove unconscious again, Monarch proceeds to kidnap Hawk and to bring him to the mountain as well, saying that he's gonna close off all other possibilities but the one where he comes into existence. From there, he proceeds to a nuclear power plant. Hey you, show me some ID! And Monarch shoots him.
Employee of the month, ladies and gentlemen.
I really can't get over this, honestly. You live in the DC universe and see a big guy in a big suit of armor walking around a nuclear power plant, and your first instinct is, show me some ID! How have you not drowned while washing your hands, dude? Monarch steals a number of objects from power plants and laboratories. But also the weirdest thing of all, a portrait of Millard Fillmore from the National Gallery. I mean, if he had stolen a portrait of Anton York, our greatest 45th president, I'd understand that at least. Wave Rider speculates that the portrait theft is less for the portrait part and more for the elements in the paint pigments, since Monarch was experimenting with clean energy from unlikely components. From what we know about this dude, he probably isn't gonna use it to power a vacuum cleaner. Wonder if Millard Fillmore could blow up the world. Okay, here's another problem with having two different writers for either issue. For some reason, Dennis O'Neil apparently thought what this story needed was some broad comedy. Lol, here's the Flash eating fast food and Monarch stealing a painting of the 13th president. Isn't it wacky? This is especially jarring after we've just had Monarch murder two people, and it won't be the last. Nothing like that was in the first issue. And why would there be? Anyway, Monarch finishes the device he's been constructing, explaining that he knows exactly what Hawk is feeling right now. His feelings of insecurity, rage, and how he feared that one day he would lose control of himself. How he needed his partner to provide a check on that same murderous rage. He then reveals that the device he's constructed should kill all the superheroes now, since together they're a match for him. From there, he murders Dove. And then the Flash pops in to ask, I wonder if Millard Fillmore could kill Dove. Don't worry, everybody, there would be an elaborate explanation later in the pages of JSA that said that she would survive. We're not getting into it now. Comic books. Anyway, Monarch releases Hawk, who goes into a murderous rage. He rips off Monarch's helmet and beats him to death, Monarch revealing as he dies that it's just like he remembered. He murdered Dove, and then he murdered himself. And then he monologues to himself. Crazy? Not me! I've never been less crazy!
Is this the human condition of madness, leader? It is.
It's the world that's bonkers! Screwed up planet full of screwed up people doing things that hurt each other! Hurt themselves! And you know why? Because nobody stops them. Till now, that is. Dove always thought I was too chaotic. But I'll show everyone how much order I can bring to things.
Are you crazy? Is that your problem?
So here we are, my friends. Hank Hall, aka Hawk, strips off his own clothes and puts on Monarch suit. I guess causing a predestination paradox, because where does the Monarch suit come from originally without it? I don't know, maybe he makes a second one later, but it needs to come from the future first. This was their solution to the leak. Murder Dawn Granger, aka Dove, and in retrospect, fridged her because they murdered her in order to advance a dude's story. Turn Hawk into Monarch. Oh, and I guess cancel their book. I don't know how it was doing in sales, but I can't imagine bad enough to warrant this. DC just shooting itself in the foot by eliminating two heroes, making one evil and outright killing the other, alienating the fans of the two characters because they needed a twist. And here's the thing that makes this all worse. While I have not recapped the annual issues, I did read them. And the funny thing about all those annuals was that, yeah, they popped us into the future to see some dark times, but none of them showed the future that Monarch had created. All except one. All the other annuals were just dark future stories for our heroes. People moving on, heroes engaging in less heroic deeds, guilt, sorrow, etc., etc., but they were all still the same world that existed before. Not the future of 2030 with Monarch, or even anything close to that. But there was one that did. The only one that confirmed what heroes could not, in any reality, be Monarch. And, of course, it was the Hawk and Dove annual. Explicitly written, no matter what the future, they fought him, never became him. Which really begs the question of who the hell they were fighting in that annual if Hawk was supposed to have come back in time and killed himself. But that's what makes it so shocking, of course. Forgetting that they made it so shocking because it was stupid and made no sense, not because ZOMG, Hero was bad. This change was so idiotic, so utterly ridiculous, and so hated by both comic fans and comic writers alike that they spent the next 2 decades trying to retcon it. I'm not even kidding. Aside from undoing Dove's death later on and saying it was all an illusion, we saw one example of them trying to turn Captain Atom back into Monarch in Battle for Bloodhaven, but that wasn't even their first attempt to do that. It's like they had huge plans for the DC Universe banking on Captain Atom being Monarch that the higher-ups screwed over at the last minute, so they decided to keep trying to shove a retcon back in that people wouldn't have even been happy about to begin with. Like, I'm struggling here to think of a single time when a long-established hero was turned into a villain in comics that people actually liked, that they were all in on, that everybody was like, oh, hell yeah, this is the story I wanted to read, more of this. Maybe people like a story where a hero goes darker or has to do morally questionable or ambiguous things, but those tend to only be because in the end, the character realizes their mistake in going dark or feels incredibly guilty about it. They like character development or the drama that comes from having to see heroes having problems with their friends and loved ones. But going flat out, mustache twirling, moo-ha-ha-ha evil without being under some sort of mind control or something? Even Terra from the Teen Titans, who was designed to be a villain from her very conception as a character, made to betray the team. There have been people mad about it to this day, both fans and creators who will try to be like, oh, she was manipulated, it wasn't her fault, it was bad to not have her be redeemed. Heroes becoming villains is just something that pisses people off, and yet comics still try to do it or retcon it happening. And the funny thing is that they had a better solution ready for them right away. Make Wave Rider become Monarch. A self-fulfilling prophecy where the man who thought he could save the world ended up dooming it. Have him be so terrified of the dark futures he sees for these characters that he feels that only he could stop them. Or hell, maybe he realizes that he's the one who becomes Monarch and stops himself, having the bravery to take action to stop himself before he goes too far. Oh, we can't do that! The entire event was about a well-established hero becoming Monarch. Who gives a crap? Is anyone upset about Silver Age stories that have deceptive advertising on their covers? It's marketing! People will get over it as long as you have a strong enough story that works instead! 30 years later, this story is not remembered as a tragic tale where a hero became a villain and was only stopped because of a traveler from the future who was inspired by the good deeds of superpowered beings. It's remembered as that garbage event where Hawk murders Dove and goes insane for stupid contrived reasons because DC thought having a twist was more important. Stories don't have to be unpredictable to be good. Hell, the fact that people can see where things are going just means that you're doing your job properly as a storyteller. It's only a problem if you haven't made the story compelling enough for people to be invested in its conclusion. Anyway, we cut over to Metropolis, where there's an evacuation going on for reasons. Yeah, we later learned that Monarch apparently called out the League on TV or something, and that he'd fight them at a certain time in the city, which really feels like one of those moments that's rushed because of all the story changes. And what do you know? There's a little boy named Matthew who was separated from his parents before this upcoming battle. I wonder what this could lead to! This is what I mean about predictability. I'm annoyed by this story, so something that makes perfect sense to have in the narrative of this time travel plot, something that has had so much emphasis placed on it for Mathew Ryder's life, is just frustrating instead of neat. Also, probably would have helped their twist with this if his parents didn't say his name out loud like that. Captain Atom wants to fight Monarch alone, blaming himself for what his possible future self did, but the others reassure him it's not the case, and they especially don't want to risk Monarch using his device to blow up a city if they don't show up. As such, he instead decides to do something else while they engage Monarch. The guy plans to blow up the city or something and has full knowledge of all the heroes, their identities, their weaknesses, etc. All thanks to computer files left by future Monarch for Hank Hall. Superman punches off his helmet to reveal his identity to the others. I was Hank Hall. I was Hawk. I am Monarch. Bet you're pretty surprised by this turn of events, huh? You like it? You like this twist? You like the surprise on this? Isn't it surprising? Be impressed, damn it! It seems Captain Atom's secret plan was to come up from the ground under him. I have no idea what the hell the device is that he's built, but it apparently grants him enough energy to push back the heroes. Save for Captain Atom, who is somehow immune to the energy he's utilizing. As such, he's able to absorb the energy from the device before it explodes out. Monarch tries to intervene, but it just results in the two of them making a tangle of reality, twisting time and space and being.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
The two shrink, I guess. So the giant stuff was meant to be ironic? And they vanish, the heroes quickly working to help anyone in the Star Labs building this was happening near who hadn't managed to evacuate yet. And of course, in the subway tunnels below is Mathew Ryder, who ends up being saved by Wave Rider. And of course, Wave Rider touching his past self results in the Blinovich limitation effect, and the resulting explosion of energy kills them all! The end! Sorry, I just wish I was reviewing Doctor Who again instead of this. However, he doesn't say the lines about heroism because I don't know if Dennis O'Neil actually read the first issue or just a summary. It's a neat detail of Wave Rider being the hero who saved himself, since of course he's a virtual unknown, and the young Mathew wouldn't know who he was. Plus the presence of the other heroes around would affect his memory. And so our comic ends with Captain Atom arriving in the time of dinosaurs, somehow, along with one of Monarch's gloves, so this can lead to an unimportant, not that interesting mini-series called Armageddon, The Alien Agenda. This comic half sucks. Like I said earlier, the first issue is friggin' excellent, and it's just a pity that the second issue was such a letdown. What a bizarre drop in quality. The first issue is amazingly well written, setting up a believable dystopian future with a consistent character focus that really gets us invested in Mathew Ryder and his mission, with good dialogue and narrative development. Admittedly, I don't know how much better this would have been if Captain Atom was revealed as Monarch, since, as I said, making heroes inexplicably turn villainous is always groan-worthy, but it's clear that not as much care has been put into the second issue as the first. Having a different writer was such a baffling decision. You honestly could read both books side by side without any of the tie-ins and follow it, but it feels completely disjointed as a result of the change in writer. The mood for the second issue is off, not helped by turning what should be Wave Rider's story into Captain Atom's. Guilt over something he won't end up doing, or rather guilt for freeing Monarch from the time stream, which is just goofy when there's no way he could have known, and it's a result of a future that won't happen. And can we talk about how idiotic Monarch's plan is here as a result of the changed reveal? He says he's worried about ensuring his version of events comes to be and that it will last, but then ends up setting up a predestination paradox of forcing himself into becoming Monarch at the cost of his own life, meaning that his dictatorship in the future won't have him guiding it after a certain point. Or did he just expect to fake his own death and then travel back to the future? It's nonsense. Dan Jurgens' art for both issues is good and reliable, but I would hope by now you'd expect that, since the guy is nothing if not extraordinarily talented when not being rushed. Also, I just realized the title is really kind of dumb. This is not Armageddon. Killing off the world's superheroes is terrible, but it's not the end of the world. And apparently Monarch's decision to travel back in time caused him to try to enact his plan early, so it's not even 2001 when he was going to kill the heroes, so that part's a lie too! What a waste of an event that could have been incredible. And unfortunately, we're not going to be getting that much better next time, as Event Comics Month heads over to Marvel for Secret Invasion.
Sitting on my couch reviewing comics, the worst parts that you will ever see. It's sad that comic books are for geeks, but they're not. They're for everybody. If you doubt that I am a man, I am a man.
Then he hears a whisper of movement, and is suddenly filled with awe and joy.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!